As a young person, it's just good to kind of take a beat, think it through, seek some resources, right? Like have someone who's not connected to the situation, maybe who knows you deeply, that can offer some words of wisdom.
Yeah.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of A Higher Purpose, a Vanderbloemen podcast. I am your host, Brett Connolly, and joining me as she does every week, Sarah Gonzalez in the house.
Hey, what's up? I'm back.
Man, we're going to have a really exciting episode. We have Michelle Manuel in the house.
Yes.
I'm excited. You would say you're jazzed for it.
Very
I'm
jazzed.
learning. But let me just tell you a little bit about Michelle Manuel. She is the Enneagram guru. She has an MDiv. She has a Master of Arts in Pastoral Counseling. She is an ordained elder through the United Methodist Church and has been a pastor in the Houston area for a number of years. And we are going to be breaking down the Enneagram, using it as a tool, not a crutch. So let's go! So Michelle, we've already established that you're kind of the Enneagram guru.
Yeah, kind of a big deal. Kind of a big deal.
Please.
You've been deep in the roots for well over a decade in the weeds of the Enneagram. And so I think we're going to have listeners that are really well versed in the Enneagram, or maybe they're just kind of spreading their wings for the first time and they're like, what the heck is an Enneagram? So could we kind of start there of just establishing like, where did the Enneagram come from, kind of the history of it a little bit?
Right. Yeah. Well, the Enneagram is somewhat mysterious, similar to our faith. There is mystery to it. But the Enneagram is just simply a personality typing system, but it has a psychological component and a spiritual component. And where it came from, because it is so very ancient, there's not written things about it really until maybe the 1900s, really around the 1950s when the rise of psychology really started getting, really kind of going. Then Claudio Naranjo started writing about it, and it came to the United States around that time.
Okay.
So there are ideas that it came from basically what we would say the sons of Abraham. So it does have some religious roots, but not tied to any one religion. So the sons of Abraham are the three religions that find Abraham to be an important character: Christianity, a little bit of Islam, and Judaism. And so, but again, none of those religious systems would say the Enneagram is foundational to our faith, right? So, but it's Middle Eastern roots, and then of course it's been modernized, and then recently pop culture Christianity got a hold of it.
Yeah, it took off.
And everybody's got a meme, and
That's right.
the 9 types of ice cream. You can identify your personality. Yes, yes, all of those things. So, although I will just say, please don't try to identify your type through a meme. It's much deeper.
Yeah.
It
Which
is
vacation
much
home
deeper.
am I? Yeah, like those are always my favorite. Yeah.
Exactly, yes. So within it, there's 9 personality types. But what I love about it is that you're not pigeonholed. So I used to be into the Myers-Briggs thing. I've taken the DISC and the Berkman, and all of those are lovely, and each personality typing thing offers its own gifts to us. What I really enjoy about the Enneagram is that you aren't just pigeonholed to like, you're an Enneagram 9 and sorry about you, there's nothing you can do.
Yeah,
Right? Like, you kind of stink. Sorry, But with a 9 or any number, you have 2 wings.
Yeah.
So you have some energy that you just naturally access. You have a stress and a security point that you access that energy naturally from. Yeah. And then the Enneagram, each number has 3 subtypes.
Yeah.
So it's not just 9 types. It's what is 9 times 3? 27?
Yep.
Listen, I do theology. I
quick.
don't do math.
Can we get some facts on that?
Yeah, I think that. Yeah,
I
think that was
refuse
27.
to do math. I don't do that anymore. So
that up.
yeah, but there's all these different types, and so I've had people say, "Well, I know I'm an 8, but they also say they're an 8 and we're nothing alike." And I'm like,
Right.
"Well, they're probably a different type. They might be in their stress right now, whatever." So there's a lot of wiggle room. It's dynamic, and so you're not just set and stuck.
Yeah.
And the Enneagram also gives you a path toward transformation,
Yeah.
which is my favorite part. Because yes, when we are identifying our number, we find out kind of the yucky stuff.
Yeah.
We get to identify our favorite flavor of sin, if you will. And but then the Enneagram says, guess what? You aren't your personality.
Right.
You are your essence. You're what we would call the image of God in you. Just kind of gets covered up by these layers of personality, by these coping mechanisms that we've had to use to move through a fallen and broken world.
Yeah.
But the Enneagram says you can relax those layers of personality, and you can have that image of God shine through again and afresh. And that to me, as a pastor, that Enneagram thing just goes right along with, we believe in that transformative love of Jesus Christ. We believe in that journey of sanctification, constantly being made into the image of Christ. And that we're not just stuck
Yeah.
in the sin. We're not just stuck with that yuck.
Yeah.
There's grace for
Yeah.
today.
That's
I
good.
like that.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit, go back. I know he said that you've kind of been the guru about 10 years now. How did you get into the Enneagram?
Seriously.
Yeah.
With your background in ministry and all of your extensive education and all the things, what made you get into it?
Yeah. So when I was in seminary, Dr. Marilyn Elliott, who she's now retired, she was a vice president at Asbury Seminary.
Wow.
She hosted a retreat for seminary spouses.
Okay.
And I, being the good Enneagram 8, forced myself onto that retreat. I was not a seminary
There it
spouse.
is. There.
I was a seminary student. I had, fortunately, also married a seminary student, so I guess I qualified in some way.
Yeah.
But I was like, "Hey, Marilyn, I'm coming on that retreat," and she taught us the 9 types, and it just rang so true for me.
Wow.
I had been on this sort of healing and growth journey, and this message from God continued to find me. And the message was, feel your feelings. And so, I mean, it was like happening in therapy. I had been in some intense healing prayer sessions where the message just continued to come, like, your feelings are good. Let them come forth. Your feelings are God-given. Feel your feelings. I was early in recovery, and that message was coming forth, like, don't cover up your feelings, don't numb them, feel them. And then all of a sudden, there was this kind of cataclysmic moment where I'm on this retreat that I forced my way onto. And then the message for my personality type was, your feelings are good. You need to feel them. And so it was just kind of this right moment in my own journey where God really got my attention. And I said, okay, I'm really into this thing. So I got home, I read a book by Richard Rohr, and he had done some early writing on the Enneagram here in our nation, in America. And so I was kind of off to the races. Unfortunately, seminary got in the way of what I really wanted to be doing.
Okay.
So
Finish that on up.
yeah, so I wouldn't say my deep study of the Enneagram, that really didn't start until probably 2017.
Okay.
And I was working at a church that, in the United Methodist Church, we have a continuing education line item.
Yeah.
I said, hey, can I use this to go study with Suzanne Stabile in Dallas?
Wow.
Right on.
It was amazing because I live and work in Houston. Dallas is just north. I have
road.
family in Dallas. And I was like, this is going to be perfect. And I studied with her and a cohort of 40 other folks. And we studied the Enneagram together. And that was life-changing. It was transformative. You don't just heal on your own, you heal in community. And so, I really dove like head first into the Enneagram that year. The following year, I studied with her husband, the Reverend Joe Stabile, who's a United Methodist pastor as well, and former Catholic priest.
Oh, wow.
And they actually both learned the Enneagram from Richard Rohr as well. So it was I'm kind of in this lineage. But yeah, we studied contemplative practices along with the Enneagram. And then most recently I was in a cohort doing family systems in the Enneagram there. But yeah, I'm like all in. It goes right along with my ministry. Yeah. It informs me in how I can best show up for others and show up as a version of my best self.
Yeah.
You know, the best I can that day.
Right. I love that.
Yeah, I love hearing from people of like how they first heard about the Enneagram, or even just like tests and assessments to begin with. You know, it feels like everyone has a different story. It's not like you take it your sophomore year of high school and you know, it's just you stumble upon it. I'll always remember it was like freshman year of college orientation, and they made us take like a Myers-Briggs test. And I was like, I don't know what this is, but I guess I'm taking it.
Right.
And they divided us up as like introverts and extroverts. And I still didn't know what, like, I was like, I know what those words mean, but and they were like, all right, where are our E's at? And we were all like, woohoo, yeah.
I wouldn't have guessed you were an extrovert.
And that's what they
My
said.
goodness.
And I was like, oh, I'm interested in this. Like that was, I always remember going like, oh, they knew something about me before I really knew it about myself because of an assessment or a test.
Yeah, or had the verbiage to explain it.
Yeah. And then like, they were like, where are the eyes at? And they were like, ooh.
They're like, not here.
And I was like, oh, this is interesting. And then we were doing like fast forward, proposed, we're going through premarital counseling, and we're doing like the 5 love languages, which is
love that stuff.
and we're doing that, and I was like, some of it's really helpful and other things are painful. You're like, ow, I feel very seen right now.
Yeah,
ouch,
seen too much.
ouch.
Close the
Okay.
book.
But it was so helpful and has been helpful for well over a decade of marriage of her rhythms and my rhythms, and it's both love, but it's coming from different avenues.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it wasn't until like I came to Vanderblumen where they go, what's your Enneagram? And I was like, my
what?
My what?
Sounds personal.
Where's HR?
Yeah, right.
And so I just Googled it and I just did a quick assessment, and I was like, my 2 and my 3 energy is close, and I don't know what that means. And they're like, oh, you're a feeler. And I was like, oh, I don't know what that means. And so I did some more Googling. And so I wanted to ask you of like people that are getting started again, maybe they're getting started and they don't even know what they are.
Right.
Maybe they've had friends say like, oh, you're this or that, and they don't know themselves.
Right.
Where would you, is there like a recommended like landing spot for them to go? Like, hey, take it here, or just like do what I did, Google and take the free tests.
Right. Yeah. You know, there are some really great assessments out there nowadays. I was taught, I'm in the vein of folks who are like, assessments are usually 60% incorrect.
Yeah.
Like, it's just
60% incorrect.
Yes.
That's brutal.
Yes. I've heard 2 sort of Enneagram masters now say they're like 60% or over, like that amount of people have been mistyped by an assessment.
I just calculated over the last 20 seconds, and that means 40% is correct.
Yeah.
60%
You do the
is
math.
incorrect. I
You
did,
do
yeah.
it.
Remember we said we were giving up math.
There's a hidden
You didn't hear
whiteboard behind me, and I had to draw.
Carry the line.
Yeah, that's right.
That's crazy. That's a large amount of people, though. That's crazy.
Yeah. Well, and it's because, the Enneagram, like, behaviors can be the same for everybody. We all will have the same behaviors.
Right.
But it's the why that's different.
The motivation behind it.
Right? It's the motivation. And sometimes our deep inner motivations are hidden even to us. And so it's difficult to answer in a fully accurate way, right? And so I would say do some tests. Usually the ones that you have to pay for are decent these days. I think the Enneagram Institute, they are really great. Their assessment is usually the one when I'm like consulting with folks or whatever. I'm like, okay, if y'all are going to take an assessment, I'd rather you do it here at the house if you're going to do it. No, but take the assessment and do the Enneagram Institute's assessment. I think it might be $12.
Okay.
$20-ish dollars. But, really, if you don't want to fork out the money, then just do some reading. I also currently point people toward the Enneagram Institute's website because they just have this wealth of information for free. They have probably, I would say, too much information out there on each type. But, where you could start is take an assessment. It will hopefully give you, like what you said, like my 2 and 3 was right there together, or maybe it'll give you your top 3.
Yeah.
For some people, it's like, oh no, you for real are this one.
Right.
But it'll give you a neighborhood that you can sort of then live in and test out, is this the right, am I truly a 2 or am I truly a 3? Right. So it gives you, like for you, it gave you the 2 and the 3. And then you just observe yourself over time.
Yeah.
But the key is, and this is a skill not many of us have in our pocket at all, but it's called non-judgmental self-observation.
Oof.
Tell us more.
So you observe yourself
Okay.
over time,
I don't like
and
this.
you cannot judge it.
I really don't like this.
If you judge it, if you make these sort of value statements about like,
Yeah.
okay, so I'm feeling very angry right now. Well, anger's wrong. That's hateful. I'm not supposed to feel angry, especially not a good girl doesn't feel angry. Well, then you're not going to have any room to explore what's that anger about.
Yeah. Where's it coming from?
Why is there anger? Is it really fear? Okay, right? Because if you just stay at anger, it's like, okay, well, maybe I'm in the anger triad.
Yeah.
But anyone can be angry.
Yeah.
Anyone can have a lot of anger, but why?
Yeah.
And then so you sort of welcome it, you give it space to exist, and you kind of not interrogate it, because I think that's too aggressive, but just kind of say why. Why am I feeling angry?
Yeah.
Well, I'm a little bit threatened. Okay, well, why am I threatened?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, this person reminds me of my grandpa. Oh, well, what about that?
Yeah.
And you kind of start asking these questions, and you'll get to a deeper layer.
Yeah.
And eventually there will be no more whys and no more answers. And you'll get to that sort of rock bottom place, and you'll say, okay, so it's because I don't want to be abandoned. Okay, And then here's the non-judgmental piece. I don't want to be abandoned. That's interesting. That's the non-judgment. Instead of saying, ugh, what a wimp. You don't want to be abandoned. You're an independent woman. Of course you can be
Pull it
abandoned.
together.
We can do anything we want, no, instead just say, that is so interesting.
Yeah.
I'm going to stay curious about that.
Stay curious about
And I'm going to ask God and the Holy Spirit to continue to speak to me about that.
Yeah.
And eventually, over time, you will see that pattern or some flavor of that pattern
Yeah.
show up over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And then you'll be able to settle 2 or 3,
That's
right?
good.
Right.
Yeah.
I got to college a little bit after you because you're old.
Because I'm old.
And-
I'm the grandpa of the podcast.
And I was in a class my junior year. I just gotten engaged, and there was a lot of life change happening. And it was a women in ministry class, so only women were allowed to take it. And she was certified in the Enneagram.
Love
so
it.
that's when I got introduced to it. And we read the Road Back to You, took the assessment, all the things. And that was the first time I had the verbiage to understand a lot of things about
Yes.
myself.
Yes.
But the biggest one, because we were also going through premarital counseling, and I thought that the worst part of me, since I struggle with pride, is my number one struggle.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, you know me.
It happens to the best of us. Happens to
does.
the
She
best.
I'm trying to overcome it. So thanks, Brett. Thanks for bringing that up. But the biggest thing about it too is that we don't really love to ask for help.
Yes.
And so that's where the pride comes in. Is like I really can do it on my own. And I did not realize when I'm really healthy is when I am not only asking for help, but I can articulate my needs
What you need.
and talk about them. And I'd always seen that as a weakness. Like if I was really able to tell you how I'm really, really feeling, I saw that as like, I'm too much in my feels. I'm too much in my head. And it's been so stinking helpful to be able to have that knowledge for myself, to be able to use that, not as a crutch, not as like well, I get to say whatever I want to say because this is healthy me talking now.
Right,
Like,
right.
no,
Right.
I can't use it like that.
Right.
But to be able to say, okay, I have a lot of feelings right now. I have a lot of emotions. I would like to tuck them away because I would like to just people please and move past it, and I can fix myself later.
Yeah.
But in reality, if I talk about it, it's probably going to be really helpful in the long run.
And in a marriage,
Yeah.
someone who tucks themselves away for years and years and years. Unfortunately, I think those are the people who wake up one day and say, I don't know who I am. I don't know who you are. And I don't think I'm in love anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so you being able to bring your whole self to that intimate relationship is important.
Yeah.
And your spouse wants to know.
Right.
Your spouse wants to be able to connect.
Right. But we convince ourselves that like that's too much.
It's too much. I'll run them off.
Yeah.
They have their own stuff.
Yeah.
I need to care about them. That's what being a wife is about, is caring about them. Yeah. Well, your husband wants to connect with you, actually.
Yeah. Talk to me a little bit, because I think the hardest connection for me in college, that was much easier to navigate because my professors wanted more of that. Like, I went to a smaller private university, and I had so many friends that I was doing life with switching to the workforce.
Yeah.
Let's talk about those kinds of boundaries. You know,
Yes.
I don't get to tell my boss all of my insecurities
Right.
and
That's right.
deepest, darkest secrets.
Where are those outlets? What
Right.
do I? What don't I?
Yeah,
Right.
when I'm feeling those feelings and those emotions, where do I take them? How do I navigate that in a workplace? And I'm sure there's lots of people listening to this podcast that are different numbers that are maybe a little bit more aggressive than that, or numbers that are the peacemaker that is like, I would never say anything to my boss to upset them. How do you navigate that professionally? How have you kind of used that?
Yeah, boundaries are always, I think, going to be a growing edge for everybody.
Yeah.
And for each personality, it's going to look different. And so I think the first thing you have to remember is there's so much more grace available to each of us than we even realize.
Yeah.
And just because you share too much of your feelings in a meeting doesn't mean like the world is over and you probably should go and hide and maybe move to, Europe and whatever. Right. Like, it's okay.
Yeah.
But in a workplace, we do want to be professional. And
Right.
so I think when you start a job, you kind of have to be a little bit emotionally intelligent and read the room.
Yeah, we talked about that a lot on the podcast.
Right?
Yes, we
You
have.
gotta-
That's so important.
You got to read the room. But also, I think for you as a person, you have to decide what is most effective for me in this place, right? Because each workplace, I think, is going to be different. Each job, what it requires of you is different. But yeah, a lot of, I think it's okay to share your feelings, but there's a difference between sharing your experience of a behavior and then, but then do you expect someone else to do something about it? Because that's not their responsibility. So your experience, your feelings, your thoughts, everything, that's all your responsibility. That's your side of the street. And no one else really has to do anything about that, right? There should be a level of respect, but no one really needs to be caretaking, or it just gets too kind of sticky, kind of muddy.
Yeah.
And for some numbers, oversharing and then someone really responding to that, oh, that's going to feel so good. And then like 3 months down the road, one of you is like, red flag has come up.
Yeah.
And this is way too sticky and weird.
Yeah. Boundaries have been crossed.
Yeah. And it can really get kind of yucky. And so I think it is important to know I'm responsible for me. That person is responsible for them.
Yeah.
And then how can we get our job done together, right? When we interface, what are we doing here together? What's the purpose of it, right?
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just talked to someone recently that was like their role changed within the organization, and so the
kinda hard.
structure changed, and it's like those relationships naturally
That's
have
hard.
to change a little bit
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed, you heard me say a little bit of just like the journey of like Myers-Briggs to, but it seems like even taking like the DISC assessment and lean in, the Vander Index.
Vander Index, I
Oh,
knew
the
it. I knew
Vander
it.
Index.
All of those assessments I help create a crisper lens. That you see, you might have different things on the peripherals, but usually the core is the same.
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
And I would say like my kind of blind side is like, it's always is like authenticity.
Yeah.
And I'm like, one, how dare you? I'm authentic. Don't tell me that.
I'm not real. I'm the realist.
But it's like my eye is so high on the disc where it's like, oh, okay, you're going to have a lot of friends, but to a certain depth.
Yeah.
Where like the S on the disc has fewer friends, but a lot of depth. And I started realizing that when I would be like one-on-one with a friend or a small group with a friend or friend group, I was way more interested in their story, and I would deflect when
And
it
not
got
share
too real
yourself.
with my stuff.
Yeah.
But I didn't unpack that until I started doing the things with like the Enneagram and the different
Right.
assessments. And so that's been a helpful, like it was a blind spot. Like it wasn't like I was going way out of my way. I just realized, oh, I have these deep relationships, but I know way more about y'all than you know about
Right.
me. You know that I like sports and what music I like and what
Right.
movies I like and my family. But like the deep stuff,
Right.
nah, I want to hear about your stuff,
Right.
but let's dance around mine.
Yeah.
And so I've been able to learn to go like, oh, no, like this is good for accountability. This is good for me to be an outlet. We've talked about young leaders being called to pour out, but they're not being poured into. There were a couple of times in ministry and even at Vanderblumen where, you know, what we do is ministry where it felt like my cup was about to overflow
Right.
because I wasn't being authentic,
Right.
you know?
Right.
And so as you're talking with people, you say you do some consultations with the Enneagram and stuff. Let's go back to that. Are we doing this? Is it a crutch? Is it
Yeah.
a tool?
Yeah.
I've worked with people that say, you know, as we're working with different organizations across the country, hey, we had this Enneagram, don't bring us that again.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
and
so real.
Right.
It's a real
Right.
thing.
Yeah.
And it's for different positions
Right,
and stuff.
right.
But talk to me about like even maybe leaders or people trying to figure out who they are as a
Right.
leader.
Right.
What are you telling them of like grow but not pigeonholed?
Yeah, yeah. You know, the most important thing I think about the Enneagram is that it is personal work. So again, we're talking about your side of the street. It is best for you to know about you,
Yeah.
so that you can kind of self-reflect and bring what's required of you to your workplace and to your situation. And you can know sort of your pitfalls and your sensitivities and maybe some false expectations you have of others.
Right.
It's all of that. But in terms of like, well, I heard you say hiring and firing. You know, we never want to hire and fire based on Enneagram
agree.
number,
Right.
right?
Yes.
Yeah. Amen.
Never, never,
And
never.
that's what I do in
I mean,
consultation.
yes.
You know, like please
Please don't.
Never.
Put
We're
somebody in that box.
I'm sorry that person was an 8, you know, but that doesn't mean all 8s
Right.
Yeah.
haven't done their work,
Right.
That's right.
right? Like maybe a very young 8 can do. I mean, they are high energy. They are good at getting stuff done, but they might also be very outwardly destructive. Unfortunately, I say that lovingly as an 8, but yeah. And then there's other numbers that we think we want a 1. They're going to be organized and they're going to help us reform some systems.
Yeah.
And but then that one, they might not know anything about how perfectionism can really be damaging and defeating for themselves. But a 1 as a supervisor can really, if they don't know about themselves, that their love language, their first love language is critique,
Yeah.
then that's gonna be such a blind spot that can
Right.
really be harmful to others.
Right.
You know, it's gonna stifle creativity. It's gonna really hurt some relationships. So yeah, it's important to know these things about yourself. And then I would say someone else's Enneagram, this is a strong statement, but someone else's Enneagram number is really none of your business. Like, I think it's a pretty personal question. It's fun because it's kind of become like cocktail party talk. Like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm a 3 and I, achiever here or whatever. Or a 4.
That's how
like,
Brett actually introduces
Yes,
himself.
right.
Yeah.
That's how I start every podcast,
I
actually.
am an achiever. Don't worry about it. Not that big a
Little hair
deal.
flip. That's right.
Kind of a big deal. But like it's kind of fun cocktail talk. But really, when it comes down to it, the Enneagram, like I said, teaches us kind of the yucky. It teaches us our false self, right? It's the ego structure that is covering up your true self, and so that's sometimes really personal, really deep stuff. So it's great when you are sitting across from someone, you can hold a hypothesis of who you might be dealing with, right? And that's where I think it's helpful to know the stances or the triads. I think the stances are really helpful. So for our listeners, you can look up stances. Those are, there's 3, like most things in the Enneagram: aggressive, dependent, or withdrawing. And people usually wear their stance on the outside of them. They wear it like a coat. They walk in, you see their stance.
Yeah.
The withdrawing folks are more reserved,
Yeah.
more technically introverted, though not those categories don't fit all the way. But and then aggressive folks, you see them when they walk in, heads turn, they carry a big energy, they take up a lot of space. And then the dependent folks, they like move toward others. They're more other focused. And so it's helpful to know that someone in one of those is sitting across from you, because only for this purpose, because then you can have compassion for them and you can have understanding. Okay, I might be dealing with an Enneagram 9 here. They are not going to like me making some harsh judgments about X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
9s are not going to like you saying blanket statements about men or women or, whatever. Like, and so it's, you just then can enter with a little more understanding and sensitivity.
Yeah.
And then you can really get to work,
Yeah.
Yeah. Did I answer your question? What was
Yeah.
the original question?
I don't know. I just
I don't
got
even know.
captivated
Yeah.
in the Enneagram
We're
talk.
just
so
finding it. We're finding it together.
We're just going on an unexpected
Good.
journey. I want to hear kind of the spark note. You had said like these 3 are here, these 3 are here,
Yeah.
these 3. Could you tell us
Yes.
which are in like the more aggressive?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that'd be
Yes.
interesting.
Okay, so quickly, if you are taking notes, take your notes.
That's right.
The aggressive stance is the 8, the 7, and the 3. These are the people who take up a lot of space.
Okay.
They are feeling repressed. So, because guess what? Feelings slow you down. And aggressive people like to move quickly. They want to get stuff done. They want to get 10 miles down the road. An 8 wants to get 10 miles down the road. We'll figure out the details along the way, right? And 7s want to have fun. Let's just keep moving on. So those aggressive folks are, a lot of pastors are 3s, 7s, and 8s, right? Because they're bigger personalities. They usually have a stage presence about them. They know how to rally a team around them. They are charismatic, fun personalities.
Right.
So yeah, those are the aggressive stance. And in America, we love our aggressive people. We love them. Love them. And then there's the withdrawing stance. And like I said, they're a little more withdrawn. Those are the 4, 5s, and 9s. And they are so very valuable to us.
Yes.
Because they are, what are they? They're going to hate this, that it is said this way, but they're doing repressed, which just simply means they are less quick to make decisions, which is really good for us. It's really good for us. We need to be more thoughtful.
Yeah.
We need to pay more attention to some feelings.
Yeah.
And so they are, Enneagram 5s, I joke, their superpower is the invisibility cloak from Harry Potter.
Yeah.
If they come to a party, which they really wouldn't.
Like if they would.
If they
In
would
theory.
show up.
if they would come to a party, if they don't want to be seen, they will not be seen.
Yeah.
And not one person at that party will remember, oh, was Quentin at the party? If Quentin didn't want to be seen, my husband, if he didn't want to be seen, he wasn't going to be seen.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so they kind of have that invisibility cloak. And aggressive numbers, actually, if they haven't done their work, they won't see the withdrawn numbers. Now, how detrimental, if you're a supervisor, how detrimental would that be that you don't see this percentage of your staff, like truly see them? If you find yourself getting bored when they talk, if you find, it can be really detrimental to your team and to what y'all are trying to accomplish. The third stance is the dependent stance. That's the 1, 2, and 6. And these folks, they're also going to hate this, but these folks are thinking repressed. And you would say to them, they're like, I'm not thinking repressed. I do a lot of thinking.
Where the pride comes in.
Ton of thinking, right? And
I'm a 2.
you're a 2. Ooh, But I mean, if you talk to a 2, they're like, I think all the time. And
For
it's like,
sure.
yes, but is it productive thinking?
That's good.
And that's kind of the
just
thing for
overthinking.
most numbers. Yeah. Like, is it, you might be a doer, but is it productive doing? You might be a thinker. Is it productive thinking? You might be a feeler. Is it productive? Not that producing is the goal, but for For our dependent stance, they are, like I said, they move toward others. They're more other oriented, and that can be really great in some roles.
Yeah.
In some other roles, I'm thinking about a colleague I had a while ago. We did the Strengths Finder, and he had a lot of woo. A lot of woo.
It's in my top 5.
They were walking. I mean, he was like his expense account with coffees, walking across the street with people, buying them coffees. Just it. His boss was like, tone down the woo.
Tone down the woo. Yeah.
You know, because it's so highly relational. It's so highly, you know, and things can get out of balance there. Yeah. So the aggressive, dependent, and withdrawing stance. Those are the 3.
Okay. I love that you talked about how that can happen in a workplace. Like if the leader is in that aggressive one, then they're likely to look over some of these others or be bored when a Enneagram 4 is running the meeting if they're 7 and things like that. Talk about, I know a lot of our listeners are new to the workplace. We've got Gen Z coming in it, millennials as well, that maybe they have taken some personality tests, maybe they haven't. Talk about conflict in the workplace.
Yeah.
How you navigate that, not as a leader.
Yeah.
Navigating that as you've got leadership over you.
Yeah.
How can you utilize this growth mindset of learning more about you taking that accountability while navigating conflict in a workplace?
Yes. I would say one of the best tools anyone can have for conflict is like the timeout. Like and some numbers are going to be like, oh, I love a timeout. And then they never circle back.
My son hates a timeout.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes. Right. And I hate a timeout too. Right. You know, I'm like, let's get through this conflict. I've heard
power
that,
through.
you know, conflict is a catalyst to intimacy. Once we're on the other side of this fight, we're going to be so much closer. We're going to be the best of friends. Right.
Same.
But for conflict, I mean, you just can't jump to things, right?
Yeah.
And then there are some numbers, like I said, they're like, yes, I need time to think about this and I need time to process. And that is so legitimate. You know, there are folks who just, the words don't come to them right away.
Yeah.
And if they're forced to have those words, they're going to get overwhelmed. It's just not going to be a good situation.
They'll say things they don't mean.
They say things they don't mean.
Yeah.
They legitimately may not know how they're actually experiencing the situation. So I'd say the timeout is always the best. And I always coach people, have a pocket phrase. Have a couple pocket phrases.
Okay.
When you need a timeout, like, oh, that is so good. Can I have some time to think about it? Can I circle back with you tomorrow? You know, like the timeout in a marriage or any relationship, whoever calls the timeout, then it's their responsibility to circle back. And I think the rule of thumb of 24 hours is really great, you know, and it could be, you know, depending on Enneagram number, an email is good so that the person can process it and then come to a meeting, you know, but I think in terms of, you know, being a young person, I once was a young person right out of seminary and into, you know, thrown into the fire of this large church staff with like 12 other pastors. And turns out when you go to seminary, they like tell you all the answers. Like, you know, and then you come out and you're like, I know all the answers. Yeah. I should be given the keys to the kingdom. And maybe that's an Enneagram 8 for you. But I heard a wise pastor once say, he said, you know, seminary students, pastors right out of seminary, and I guess young people right out of grad school, you do know the answers, but you haven't had enough experience to ask the questions.
Right.
And I'm still finding that true for myself. Like, I recently became a stay-at-home parent, and I am seeing a view of the world that I've never seen before. Yeah. And I'm asking these questions. Okay, God, what's next? Okay, God, where am I? Okay, God, will I ever sleep again? You know, and like, who's going to cook this dinner? And I can't go to the grocery store one more time, you know. And I'm asking the questions. Yeah. And I thought I had all the answers, but I didn't have the questions, right? And so yeah, as a young person, it's just good to kind of take a beat, think it through, seek some resources, right? Like, have someone who's not connected to the situation, maybe who knows you deeply, that can offer some words of wisdom.
That's good.
That's good. I guess our time is probably coming close to
Is it,
conclusion.
guys?
I could talk for like another hour and a half.
We might have to have you back on.
Listeners,
You're
if
in
you
Houston,
want more
we're in
Enneagram,
Houston.
yes.
But I just want to know a couple of things. One, what are a couple of books that you would recommend
Yes.
people that are exploring this deeper or starting off?
Yeah.
And then we love this question with anybody that hops on of lessons learned. You know, what do you know now that you wish you would have known when you were just getting started?
Yes.
If there's like one or two nuggets, so you go, man, if I could have known that, things would have looked way different. So books and kind of lessons learned.
Yeah. So the books, and I'm not getting any royalties, no kickbacks from advertising these books.
Not
but
yet.
Not yet. Suzanne Stabile. Hello.
Hit me up. Answer my
Enneagram
emails.
godmother. Yeah. No, I mean her book, Ian Cron and Suzanne Stabile wrote that book. It was IVP Press's #1 seller for like 2 or 3 years in a row.
Wow.
I mean, people like in 2012, like people got into it. It is a fantastic introductory book. If you are not a reading girly, but you're an audiobook girly, fantastic audiobook.
I'm a reading girly.
Yeah, I'm a reading girly too.
girly.
I go to the library, don't worry about it. But yes, like it's a fantastic audiobook. And they have I think it's a fast read, but in the front of each chapter they have like a few, maybe it's 10 or 12 like questions that will help you kind of identify. And so I think that's the best introductory text that's out there.
That's awesome.
For those who have studied it for a long time, who are interested in going deeper, I would look at Beatrice Chestnut's book, and it might be called The Complete Enneagram. I'm not quite sure, but it's purple. It's white and purple, and she has some of the best writing on the subtypes.
Okay.
Now, she does not write from the Christian perspective. That's another reason I love the Enneagram, because it can give us common language outside of faith, outside of worldview. And in the workplace, we do need a common vocabulary. So I love that. But she has, her book is a reference book.
Okay.
Like, it's not like I'm going to sit down and enjoy this. But she's got great stuff on the subtypes.
Okay.
And then something that I am really enjoying reading right now is this book by Sean Palmer. He's a pastor in the Houston area, and he wrote Speaking by the Numbers, Enneagram Wisdom for Teachers, Pastors, and Communicators.
Cool.
And this book is changing my world.
Okay.
I have had these thoughts. Sean, I'm a little jealous of you that you got to write this, because
He beat you to it.
yes. Well, I've had these thoughts for a long time, like as a communicator.
Yeah.
And this bleeds into the next question. What I wish I knew when I first started out was that when I'm preaching and teaching, I am teaching 2 Enneagram 8s from an Enneagram 8 perspective. So I'm big and aggressive, and 8s sort of make these hard and fast statements and speak like what they say is law, and that's kind of not how everyone sees the world. And so it's just helpful to know I'm speaking to 8 other different types of folks.
Yeah.
And when you know the stances, you can at least say, okay, there's 3 ways of being in the world. With the triads, there's 3 ways of like seeing in the world. Anyway, it's just helpful to know there's more ways than one way
To communicate.
Yeah.
Really good.
And you're going to be missing a lot of people.
Yeah.
Especially with communicating something like the gospel.
Right.
Like, there are some numbers who don't want to hear about how like strong Jesus is, and he defeats the devil and he crushes him under, and we love that part of Jesus, don't we?
Right.
But there are some numbers who need to hear Jesus is safe.
Yeah.
Jesus is gentle.
Yeah.
Jesus is always there and can be trusted. Right? Yeah. It's amazing because God created each of us. There's that imago Dei in us. And the gospel communicates to that, communicates to each of us. So yeah, that's what I wish I had known as a young preacher and teacher.
So good.
You're missing a lot of people out there.
Yeah.
You should be a pastor.
Oh, I think I should.
Yeah, that was really
I
good.
think I
That was
should. Yeah.
good. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
This has been really fruitful, and I think a really good balance of new to or in the midst of and
Yes.
getting deeper into Enneagram. And so thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to A Higher Purpose podcast. We really enjoyed having our guest today, Michelle Manuel. I love talking about all things Enneagram and personality. I hope that you guys enjoyed it as well. If you did, please drop a comment on any of our socials. You can find us at A Higher Purpose podcast. If you want to listen to our other episodes, you can also find them on our website, ahigherpurposepodcast.com. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Hey listeners, we're wrapping up the end of season 1 for A Higher Purpose. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you gained some great insights along the way because I know I have. We're going to be taking a short break before kicking off season 2, but be sure to follow us on social media at A Higher Purpose Podcast so you'll be the first to know when we're back. We'll see you soon.